I'm really excited about today. We have some terrific folks here in town, all the way from the Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and San Quentin prison, formerly. With that, I'd like to introduce Chris Redlitz and Kinata Leal.
Thanks, David. How many aspiring entrepreneurs do we have in the audience? Someone who wants to start their own company. How many are working on a business plan right now? Got some in there? How many want to pitch me today? So 4 years ago, I entered San Quentin prison for the first time, and I was invited in to speak to a group of men about business and entrepreneurship. I asked that same question. Every hand went in the air. When I asked them what their business was, or if they're working on anything, all the hands went down. That showed me there was a lot of interest and desire, and I was there to speak to them for about 30 minutes. What happened was I was there for about 2 hours because there was so much interest and so much passion about what they wanted to do after they served their time. That was 4 years ago. I went home that night and I told my wife, Beverly, who's also my business partner, about what I had seen. And we work with young entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley every day, and I thought, why not start a technology incubator inside San Quentin? So she calmly poured me a glass of Cabernet and said, this is another one of your CCIs. That's our family acronym for Chris's Crazy Ideas. But I said, no, seriously, let's do our homework, and you should come in and see what I saw. And to be honest with you, I was really ignorant about the situation of incarceration in America. I didn't realize that 25% of the total incarcerated population is here, and we're 9% of the world's population. That we spend more on prisons in California than higher education. That it costs about $50,000 a year to incarcerate a single person. And the recidivism rate in California, returning after 3 years, is 63%. So it's not working, obviously. And we looked at it and said, if we can make just a 5% difference in recidivism, we'd save billions of dollars. So we did that research. Beverly came in and met some of the men, and she was convinced, like I was, that there are people that are really motivated and inspired to create a better life. So we came up with a curriculum, and we called it the Last Mile, because it's that last mile that's truly the path to freedom. We started it in 2010, and we came up with a 6-month program. And what we wanted to do was not just a prison program. We wanted to do a prison program that really created a difference, that created an opportunity for those men who graduated to truly have an opportunity outside. And part of that was to utilize the things that we all take for granted every day. And part of that is social media. So when we proposed the program, it was a little disturbing for the corrections department to sort of get their heads around the idea that we wanted these men in the program to be able to have a voice, to be able to participate in Twitter and Quora and blog, because transparency is a really important part of what we're talking about. So the program is really set up in 3 separate quadrants. The first is education, learning about technology. Many of the men in San Quentin have been incarcerated for 10 years or more. Many had never been on the internet before. So we wanted to teach them how the world had changed over the time they'd been incarcerated. And the second part is finding something they're really passionate about and building a business plan, using the business model canvas that many of you have exposed here at Michigan, using that formula in coming up with a business plan. And then creating a pitch and pitching that to outside guests and fellow inmates at our own demo day. So that's the program. And what we did was we selected a core group, and Kenyatta was one of our founding members, to really test and see if this worked. And as any business, we really came up with our KPIs, our key performance indicators. And there were 3. One was, does the program really resonate inside? Do they really care about this program, and is anybody really interested? Second, would we get people from the business community to participate, and would they become part of this passion program for us? And third, and most importantly, would businesses hire the graduates of the last mile? Well, I can tell you that all three have truly resonated, and we're making huge progress in all three areas. Today, we had over 100 applicants for the program in San Quentin. We have a staff of 8 volunteer faculty and many people that come in and volunteer their time. And we also have more businesses that are willing to hire than we have current graduates, which is really phenomenal. So what I wanted to do was, I wanted to show you a little bit about what I was talking about and have Kenyatta come up and give you his perspective. But as I said, we have a demo day that's really our graduation. And many of the guys that are in this program have never presented to any audience before. They never had a business idea, and they never really had a passion project. What we have seen and the results that we've got and the feedback we get is, especially VC friends of mine coming in that have experienced the last several demo days saying, some of these pitches are better than what we see out in the world. So before I introduce Kenyatta, we have now 5 graduates from the last mile, and they're all performing extremely well. Ray Hartz, who was in that video, was hired as a paid intern at Rally.org, and 2 months into his internship, they gave him a full-time job. What we found is that when we first approached companies about doing a paid internship program, and the requirement really is it's 120 days, and at the end of that term, there's no obligation to hire, but this gives our graduates that sort of launching pad they need. But what we found is that, and the response we've gotten from all the CEOs that have participated is that from day one, our graduates have had a positive impact by their attitude, their enthusiasm, and their work ethic has resonated throughout the companies. So what we thought was a one-way street is now mutual benefit, which is phenomenal. So I wanted to introduce Kenyatta, but just give a little backstory. I mentioned that I was approached to do the talk to this group of men about entrepreneurship. And when we decided to do the program, we asked around, like who would be the most appropriate men to start, and we were introduced to Kenyatta. At the time, Kenyatta was serving a 25 to life sentence, and he didn't have a release date. He'd been serving 17 years in prison. He was the most positive, enthusiastic person I think I'd ever met. And that just stunned me because here's a man in prison with not necessarily any hope of getting out, and still he was so positive about life. And I thought, well, this is a program we certainly can build around. Fortunately, through Prop 36, which is 3 strikes realignment that was passed last year, Kenyatta was eligible to be resentenced, and he received his freedom on July 3rd of this year. He's now working at Rocket Space, and again, his work ethic is second to none. As I think David mentioned in the opening, we all participate in the program. All the men participate in social media, and Quora, I don't know how many of you use Quora, but you should if you don't. It's the most popular question and answer site on the web. And all of the men participate in Quora. And Kenyatta won the Quora Answer of the Year in 2012 after over thousands of answers on Quora. He was still incarcerated. So we filmed his acceptance speech inside, and Beverly and I went to the Times Center in New York to accept the award, and they showed the acceptance speech. So the idea that someone incarcerated can win a social media award is pretty amazing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Kenyatta and have him give a little bit about his story, and then certainly we're going to field some questions. So thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having us here today. It truly is an honor and a privilege to be here with you. My name is Chrisfino Kenyatta Leal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Coach Potato. And what we do is get football fans off the sideline and into the game through a live, interactive coaching experience. At Coach Potato, we provide our users with a special combination of real-time data and live interactive technology that allows them to interact with the live games they're watching on TV. If our users call the right plays consistently, they can earn points, establish ranking, and win prizes, like trips to the BCS Bowl games, the NFL playoffs, and the Super Bowl. So we got any football fans in the house this afternoon? Where are all the football fans at? Come on, this is Michigan. Yeah? How about you, sir?
I love football.
Right? Have you ever been watching the game, wanted to go for it on 4th and 1?
Oh, yeah.
Well, now you can, with Coach Potato. Coach Potato is poised to transform the fantasy football industry as we know it, because we give our users a technological edge that not only puts them in the game, but empowers them to change it, all from their mobile device or computer. So with Coach Potato, the way you watch the game will never be the same. That's an elevator pitch that I learned and practiced thousands of times when I was in the last mile at San Quentin. And 19 years ago, I didn't know anything about a succinct message. I didn't know anything about recreating my personal brand. I didn't know anything about the social media, the internet, being an entrepreneur, any of that. 19 years ago, I was sentenced to 25 to life in prison under California's 3 strikes law for possession of a firearm. 25 to life. Now, I like to think of myself as a strong individual, kind of a tough guy, but let me tell you, when that judge said 25 to life and slammed that gavel down, I immediately went back to my cell and broke it down, crying like a 3-year-old kid. I was scared, I was confused, and most of all, I was uncertain about my future. In California, life means life. There is no getting out. And so I was really up against it. And I started entertaining all kinds of thoughts. Man, I could actually die in prison. 25 years old, I could die in prison. And I started thinking about the legacy of my life. Was I born into this world to die in prison? Something in my mind, that just didn't add up. I couldn't go out like that. So I started thinking about this. I knew I wasn't in prison just to get out. I was there for a reason. And so I really started evaluating my life and the principles that really governed my life, the way that I thought, the way that I behaved, and the results that I was getting out of life. And I had to look at it. What am I getting more of? Rewards or consequences? 25 to life, well, that's more reward than consequence, or consequence than reward. And so I had to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and really think about my life and my priorities. And I started educating myself. I got involved in programs inside. I went to a number of different programs, Breaking Barriers, Victim Offender Education Group, No More Tears, San Quentin Trust. I actually earned my college degree while I was inside an incarcerated setting. And so through this transformation process, I actually met Chris Redlitz and his wife, Beverly Parenti. And they actually introduced me to the idea of the last mile. And immediately, it struck me as something that I knew I had to be involved in. Inside, I've always had this burning entrepreneurial spirit. Unfortunately, I just used it in the wrong way, and I wound up in prison because of it. But this was a new opportunity for me, a chance for me to do something different with my life and get some different results. And so I became a founding member, and Chris and Beverly actually taught us how to figure out what we're passionate about. On day one, they asked us a question. What do you love to do so much that you would do it every day for free? What do you love to do so much that you would do it every day for free? And so I started thinking about a lot of things. And I thought, you know what? I love football. I played football. I watched football. I even coached football. inside San Quentin. It's like, man, let me start thinking about an idea around football. So we took that idea, took that passion, translated it into an idea, distilled it down into this really crisp, distinct message that I just shared with you guys. And I learned all that through the last mile. But more importantly, the last mile has changed the trajectory of my life. I'm actually standing here with you today because of the last mile. And so people wonder whether or not prison programs work. Well, I'm living proof. I didn't see it on Oprah. I didn't read it in People magazine. I'm living proof. And one thing that I know for certain is that in life, we all make choices. We all make decisions. And they're not always the right ones. How many people in here have ever made a bad choice before? Yeah? But it's through those choices that we really, propel ourselves forward. That's really what separates the successful people from the unsuccessful. The successful people make good choices, one after another, after another, after another. The unsuccessful people make bad choices, one after the other, after the other. How do I know? Because I did it. I did it. But fortunately, by the grace of God, I've been able to turn it around. And I'm standing here before you today as living proof. And I want to share this message of hope with you because I know each and every one of you are on your own path. And by the show of hands that I just saw, some of us in here have made bad decisions. But guess what? It's not over. It's not over. I really hope that each and every one of you will continue on your journey, continue to learn, to grow, to develop, and to share those gifts with the world around you. Because guess what? None of us are an island by ourselves. I would not be standing here today if it wasn't for the support that I had with the last mile. Right now, I have about 15 brothers of mine that are part of the last mile that are sitting in San Quentin right now, waiting for their opportunity. And my presence here today is helping pave the way to success for them. And I won't stop until the last mile is recognized all over the world as the #1 rehabilitation program in prison. I want men and women on the inside to understand that there is hope, there is a second chance. All they need to do is to make that choice and continue to make it day in and day out and reap the benefits of it. Now, Chris earlier had spoke about passion. I know there's some very, very passionate people in here. It takes a lot to go through the college experience. I mean, you have to be passionate about that. If you're not, you'll drop out. I guarantee you some of you in here probably know people who've dropped out because they lost that fire. But it's not over for them either. And you guys can continue to, pass on that message of hope for them by staying where you are. Stay passionate about your studies. Stay passionate about the goals that you're pursuing in life. And Big Blue, hey, this is a great institution of learning. It is. It's world-renowned. I sat in prison for years looking at the big house on TV. In one big house, looking at another big house. Now I'm finally here. And hopefully I'll make it down to the field tomorrow just to throw one pass. That's all I want to do. That's all I want to do, just one pass. But hopefully I'll make it. But I'm just blessed to be here. And I'm so thankful, man, that you guys have actually invited us to come. And I really hope that you'll go on your computers when it's okay to get back on them and check out thelastmile.org. Because trust me, there are a lot of guys like myself who are inside, who are doing the work. Not everybody in prison is in there just waiting to get out and commit another crime. There's men and women in incarcerated settings who are doing the work and they deserve a second chance and another opportunity. So when you get the opportunity, check out thelastmile.org and see what's going on. And I guarantee you, you'll like what you see. But thank you guys very much for your time.
You can take the inside.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris and Kenyatta. Thank you, first of all, for coming back to the University of Michigan, Chris.
Yep.
This is a reunion of sorts, and I know that your son Tyler, an alumnus, is here, so thank you, Tyler. And Kenyatta, thank you for coming, and delighted to have you here. Welcome.
Absolutely.
Can I just acknowledge Tyler over here? You want to raise your hand? And Julie Lachey, who's our program coordinator at San Quentin. So I just want to acknowledge them.
I really appreciate what both of you had to say. The Last Mile obviously is a pretty spectacular program. I'd like to hear a little bit about that. But Kenyatta, can I just tell you, I'm really impacted by your humanity, and I'm impacted by something you said in that video, and I've written it down here. I'd just like you to tell us a little bit more about that. If you treat a man as he is, he will remain as he is. But if you treat a man as he can and should be, he will become as he can and should be. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that, well, first of all, I mean, that's a quote from a philosopher. I can't remember his name. Does anybody out here know his name? Goethe, Goethe, or?
Goethe.
Is that his name?
I think so.
I thought it was yours, man.
Nah, I can't take credit for that. That's a good one. No, but seriously though, to me, I mean, that statement, it really, it encompasses, I think, something that's really fundamental about us as human beings, and that we have the capacity to be whoever we want to be. If we want to be failures, we can certainly be that. But I think that when it comes to success, so much of it depends on who we're surrounded by. You know, I think that if we're given the right and proper mentors and role models around us, and we're consistently hearing the right messages in life, then obviously that's going to send us on a trajectory that's much different than if we're getting this negative feedback and have these negative role models. And so inside prison, I think there's so many stigmas revolving around prison, and I think that more often than not, we're not given the opportunities that it takes to succeed in prison. And so when I added that quote into the talk that I was given that day, I really wanted to try to open up some people's minds that if you give people opportunities, then these are the kind of things that can happen.
And you won the award, the Shorty Award, for your response to a question on Quora. And I think that question went something like this: what was it like that first day of a 25 plus year sentence? And I just want to read to the students here one line from that response, because it kind of takes us back to that moment, and it's remarkable to have you here in light of that moment. He said, "I felt like the most worthless piece of crap ever known to mankind."
Yep.
Take us from there all the way through meeting to Chris to right now. I mean, you sort of walked us through there a little bit, but when this is a different Kenyatta that Chris is talking about, and the guy I met at Rocket Space, tell me about this, because it's really remarkable.
Yeah, well, I don't know if anybody else in here has actually read that piece, but the question was, what does the first day of a 5+ year prison sentence feel like? And in the answer, I basically, take the reader through exactly what I went through that day. And the line that he's speaking of was the moment when I got escorted up the stairs and locked into the cell that I would be in for the rest of that day. And when the door slammed behind me, it was a very, very surreal moment. It was like, this is it. This is the end of the line. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. This is it. You're in prison with a 25 to life sentence. And I mean, I don't think anyone ever wakes up one day and says, hey, I want to go get 25 to life. I certainly didn't. But when I found myself in that position, it just made me feel horrible. I mean, I felt like I was about this big,
And you were there on a third strike. So
yeah.
We've been talking about the third strike rule. Can you briefly describe what that rule was? Because I think this is an important part of your journey, Chris, with the last mile, and so I just want to make sure we all understand what this is.
Yeah, well, the California's three strikes law came about in 1993. There was a crime that was committed by an ex-offender. He's a repeat offender. His name is Richard Allen Davis. He actually sits on San Quentin's death row right now. He kidnapped, raped, and murdered a young girl named Polly Klaas. You know, God bless her soul. She did not deserve to die like that. And there was a great deal of public outrage around her murder. And when they apprehended Richard Allen Davis, this was at a time when the tough on crime period was really at its peak. And it was an election year, and you know, everyone was calling for tougher sentences. And so what happened was they came up with this law called three strikes. And if you commit 2 violent felonies, then any third felony that you commit, you get 25 to life for.
Regardless of what kind of felony it is.
Exactly. So the person who committed the crime kidnapped, raped, and killed a little girl, but 3 strikes came out, and now people were getting 25 to life for stealing a loaf of bread or, you know, cheating on a DMV test and things like that. And so I had committed a robbery in 1991 before 3 strikes came out, and I signed a plea bargain for 2 counts of robbery. In 1994, when the law changed, those 2 counts of robbery turned into 2 strikes. I had no idea. I was oblivious of what was going on with the law. And I got out in 1994 and started hanging out with the same people all over again and put myself in a position where I could get struck out. And that's exactly what happened. I got pulled over, got caught with a firearm, and was sentenced to 25 lives.
So what's Prop 36? Because this just happened last year, and this sounds like had an impact on you sitting here today.
Yeah.
So what is it?
Yeah.
So it's basically reform that says that those people that commit a nonviolent third strike can have the opportunity to be resentenced. So you have to go through a sort of evaluation process. In Kenyatta's case, it was really interesting because I was in the resentencing hearing, and the judge that sentenced him 19 years before was the presiding judge. Fortunately, you know, he was represented by some of the folks at Stanford who actually wrote the initiative, and they were phenomenal because this was definitely a gray area. That when they wrote the law, they weren't sure. There was no stipulation around firearm. Was it a violent? Was it nonviolent? It was sort of in this gray area. So fortunately, we won that. He was resentenced. He was resentenced to 7 years. He had already served 19, so therefore he was able to be free without parole. And when I asked to go back with the judge into his chambers and talk to him, and he said, you know, I just have to tell you something. He said, I was on Google looking up me, himself, and Kenyatta's name popped up. And it was all Quora and blog posts. So we started reading. This is before, you know, it may have an impact on his decision. Whether or not it did, he really reflected on it. He said, you know, I was reading this pages and pages and pages. Never came up about his sentence. It was all the things that he had written in social media over the years that the judge was reading, and he really felt good about his resentencing at that point. There was no doubt in his mind. He said, I'm sure he's going to be successful based on what I've read.
But Kenyatta, you're only able to put those things out on Quora because the Last Mile program existed.
Absolutely.
So can you describe to us, Chris, how that works while you're in prison, but you're posting stuff?
Yeah, so as I sort of alluded to before, when we were developing the program, we wanted to do something that really leveraged everything that we had, opportunities that we had to become more transparent. Obviously, social media, in good and bad, it creates transparency, right? So when I went to the CDCR, which is the California Department of Correction and Rehabilitation, I said, we want to do this entrepreneurship program, but we really need to incorporate social media and allow the guys to have the ability to have a voice. And you know, their reluctance really turned into something that was very supportive today. So what we do is the guys in the program, every week they're required to answer questions on Quora, do a blog post. We have a Twitter feed at TLM, so you can check it out. And it's really given them a chance to, for the first time, be transparent. We had a session the other night, and we're in the first 6 weeks of our new session. And one of the guys said, I've been in prison for 18 years. No one's ever asked me to be transparent or tell my story. So it's something that they have to sort of get comfortable with.
Why is that so important, the transparency?
Well, I think because we want people to really understand who these people are. There's no secret about what they do. When you go into court, see their profile, it has their age, their crime, and their sentence. I think that's really, really important to the program, that they understand who the individuals are, where they came from, and where they're going. We would talk a lot about rebuilding personal brand. So you saw Hammer in the video. Hammer has been really active in the program, and he was in our first session this year, and he talks a lot about that because he went from being the #1 artist in the 80s to falling from grace and then rebuilding himself through technology. So it can happen to the most famous people. So using social media to really help rebuild a personal brand is really, really important. And a lot of the things that they write now, we actually use as their resume when they're going through their interview process.
So this is billed sort of as an entrepreneurship program, but those that have completed the program, now been released from prison, are they actually doing entrepreneurial things, or are they working inside companies? What's the end state for them at the moment?
Yeah, so it's an entrepreneurship program, but we require that they go through an internship first because we want them to get the experience of working in a company, especially a startup company. So before you venture out to do something on your own, we want them to have some sort of base understanding. Ultimately, a lot of guys want start their own business. Not all of them will. But our first graduate, Tulio Cardozo, he actually interned with us, and he learned WordPress and Drupal, and now he has his own web consulting business. And he's actually employing one of our recent graduates. So that's the ultimate success of having a graduate hire a graduate, right? That's perfect.
Absolutely, yeah. So last time that you were here, Chris, you met with the Michigan Department of Corrections, and that meeting was about, can we expand the last mile?
Yep.
And then this morning you met with them too. What does the status look like for expanding the last mile here in the state of Michigan and in general, and why is that important to you?
Why is it important to expand it, or here?
Here.
Or both? We could say we're running this program in San Quentin, it's very successful, and stop there and change lives. But we realize that this is very transferable. This is a template, as Kenyatta said, that we want to take out, nationally, certainly, because we know it works. We can teach people to teach the program. Look, I come from sort of this startup mentality where we find something that works and want to scale it. There's no reason why we can't scale this with the right support. So we're actually opening in LA County in 3 weeks, LA County Twin Towers downtown. And we're starting with the men's facility, and then we'll graduate in the women's facility. And every place we go, we want a core support. What I found early on was that I can't start at the local level at the prison. I need to start at the governor's office. So Jerry Brown's very supportive in California. Governor Snyder here is very supportive. So they realize the impact that we can make. But it really, the success of the program is in the volunteers, the people that actually go in the prison every day. We're not there, Beverly and I are not there every week like we used to be. So it's people like Julie that run the program, and the volunteers that we have are critically important. So if any of you are interested in participating, this spring we'll actually be launching in Jackson Prison.
That's terrific. So actually that's a sincere comment by Chris. If you are interested in participating, I would encourage you to come down after class and talk with him.
And I'll just say, there's a guy, Andrew Kaplan, I don't know if anyone knows Andrew, but he was an MBA student here. I met him here last year. He is now in our faculty in San Quentin. He works at LinkedIn, so it does work.
That's terrific. So one last thing, then I want to open it up to a couple questions from the students. You're at Rocket Space, I saw you at Rocket Space, which is a pretty sweet deal in San Francisco. And you're doing this Coach Potato thing. Are you doing Coach Potato right now, and what do you see the future of that looking like for you?
Well, I definitely want to bring Coach Potato to fruition, But I think anyone in here who knows about entrepreneurship, that it's a process. And for me, just getting out of an incarcerated setting, it's really important for me to get my life together first. Rocket Space has really provided me with an excellent opportunity, not only to help, get myself acclimated back into the, to the free world with a job and having money and these kind of things, but it's also, Rocket Space, for those of you that don't know what it is, it's an innovation campus in San Francisco that houses about 130 startup companies. And so I'm constantly surrounded by entrepreneurs. And I'm working with the operations side of the business, and I'm really getting a bird's eye view of exactly what it takes to run not only a successful company like Rocket Space, but also the different challenges that entrepreneurs face on a day-to-day basis. It's more than just, giving a flashy little pitch or something like that. It's hard work, it's dedication, it's sacrifice, it's pivoting when you need to. It's a whole bunch of different things involved in it. And so recognizing that, I see that I need to build this fundamental foundation for myself first. And then I believe that when the time is right, Coach Potato will come to fruition.
That's terrific. I'd like to take a couple questions from students. We're running up against the time, but let's take a couple right here. The question is, what ideas from the last mile will lower the number of reincarcerated persons across the United States?
Yeah, so there's this statistic that basically says people that are educated in prison have a lower recidivism rate generally. So we wanted to do something that was prison education but didn't stop at the gate, right? So it was important to have that transition and a landing pad, so to speak, and that's why these internships are so important, where it's sort of a fluid process that gets reintegrated. So that's one part that in our research doesn't really exist today. There are prison programs and there are post-prison programs. There aren't programs that go through the whole gamut, right? So that was really important. And I think part of it is, it gets back to this transparency piece about, there is such a sort of the stigma, right, about formerly incarcerated, ex-cons, whatever you want to call them. And it's just immediate, they check the box and they're eliminated. We wanted to create this transparency saying, there is value in these folks, and they have a lot of passion, as I said before. So it's more, that education for businesses. And just quickly, one of my inspirations at the beginning of this was a guy named Dave Dahl. And Dave was incarcerated in Oregon for on and off for 15 years. He was a meth addict and he was a mess. He came out and he went to his family bakery and asked for a job, and they said no, but go in the corner and kind of create your own thing. Fast forward today, he took that nugget of opportunity, and his business today will do almost $100 million, and you can probably see Dave's Killer Bread in one of your local markets. So there's a kind of inspiration that we need, and that starts waking businesses up saying anybody can create opportunity like that.
And on top of that, Dave also hires 30% of his workforce are people who are leaving incarcerated settings.
That's right.
So not only has he created success for himself and his family, but he provides opportunity for people that are coming out of incarcerated settings. And that's pretty phenomenal.
Yep.
The question is whether being incarcerated has given Kenyatta unique insight into finding entrepreneurial opportunities.
I think I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I think something in me has always been, kind of had that hustle attitude, want to go out and get mine, not wait for somebody else to give it to me, but go out and get mine. Unfortunately, I applied that in the wrong way. I think prison actually gave me this insight to slow down and really think about what I'm going after. And now that I have this new insight about how to approach things, reaching a little bit further and digging a little bit deeper than I ever have before. And I think it's, by the grace of God, it was that prison experience that actually, I tell people all the time, prison was actually a blessing in disguise for me. I would not be sitting here with you today had I not gone to prison. Just simple as that. And so for me, I definitely think that prison did give me a little better insight as to how to view things, how to view my life, how to make better choices about where I want to go. What do I want to hustle with? This over here or this over here? I know where this goes. There's only two places, where that crime and that hustle in the street leads to. And maybe some of you guys know some people like that, but it's either prison or death. That's it. By the grace of God, I got blessed with prison. And so I've been able to turn that around, and I think that that's been a huge, huge bonus to my life.
Chris, thanks for coming back again. Kenyatta, thanks for sharing your story. And University of Michigan, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.